Welcome to Rapid Report, your trusted platform for in-depth analysis, verified information, and fearless reporting on the events shaping our world today. Tonight, we bring you a story that could redefine American democracy and alter the balance of power in Washington forever. The United States is facing what many lawmakers are calling an unprecedented political and constitutional crisis, one that cuts across party lines and strikes at the very heart of presidential accountability. According to emerging reports and a widely circulated political briefing, 140 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, including 62 Republicans, have signed a joint resolution demanding the immediate launch of impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump. At the center of this explosive development is a 140-page Inspector General report that allegedly documents systematic obstruction of justice, including the deletion of subpoenaed emails, recorded threats toward witnesses, and millions of dollars in financial payments tied to witness legal defenses. What makes this moment extraordinary is not only the seriousness of the allegations, but the scale of bipartisan unity behind them. Lawmakers who once opposed impeachment now say the evidence leaves them no choice. They argue this is no longer about politics. It is about the Constitution. Tonight on Rapid Report, we go beyond the headlines. We break down the alleged evidence, examine the political and legal stakes, and ask the most important question of all. Is the U.S. Congress still capable of acting as a check on presidential power? Stay with us for a deep, fact-driven analysis you won't find anywhere else. And before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Rapid Report. Like this video and share it so others can stay informed in this critical moment for global democracy. Washington is facing what many lawmakers are calling one of the most severe constitutional crises in modern American history. According to a political video circulating widely in congressional and media circles, 140 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, including 62 Republicans, have signed a joint resolution demanding the immediate launch of impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump. If confirmed, this would represent the largest bipartisan impeachment initiative ever assembled in the United States. At the center of this explosive development is a 140-page Inspector General (IG) report, which, according to the narrative presented in the video, alleges a pattern of systematic obstruction of justice at the highest level of the executive branch. Lawmakers backing the resolution argue that the breadth, technical detail, and documentary nature of the evidence have fundamentally altered the political calculus, collapsing long-standing partisan barriers that previously shielded the presidency from unified congressional action. A historic bipartisan revolt. Supporters of the resolution describe the moment as unprecedented, not merely in scale, but in political symbolism. Of the 140 signatories, nearly half are Republicans, several of whom had previously opposed impeachment efforts on constitutional or political grounds. In the video's telling, these lawmakers now argue that the evidence outlined in the IG report leaves them no discretion. This is no longer a question of party loyalty. Several Republican signatories are quoted as saying, "It is a question of constitutional duty." If accurate, this coalition would surpass previous bipartisan impeachment efforts in both size and ideological breadth, signaling a profound rupture within the House and raising fundamental questions about presidential accountability in an era of extreme polarization. Inside the Inspector General report, the IG report described in the video is portrayed as unusually detailed, technical, and forensically grounded. It allegedly outlines 11 distinct instances of obstruction of justice, supported by digital records, sworn testimony, and audio evidence. Among the most serious allegations are deletion of subpoenaed emails. The report is said to include timestamped server logs allegedly showing that emails subject to congressional subpoenas were deleted from secure government servers after preservation orders had been issued. Recorded phone calls. According to the narrative, investigators obtained audio recordings in which President Trump allegedly threatened witnesses with political retaliation or personal consequences should they cooperate with investigators. Financial inducements. The report allegedly documents $7.8 million in payments routed to legal defense funds associated with key witnesses. Investigators reportedly characterized these payments as potential inducements rather than routine legal assistance. The video claims that the evidence is cross-referenced, digitally verified, and corroborated by sworn testimony from multiple current and former White House officials. The emergency bipartisan meeting. The turning point, according to the video, came during an emergency closed-door meeting convened by former Representative Liz Cheney, which reportedly lasted more than 4 hours. Lawmakers from both parties were said to have reviewed summaries of the IG findings, listened to excerpts of alleged recordings, and examined forensic data related to email deletions. Several Republicans who attended the meeting and had previously resisted impeachment are portrayed as reversing their positions afterward. The video suggests that this shift was driven not by political pressure, but by the cumulative weight of the evidence as presented. By the end of the meeting, participants reportedly agreed that inaction would itself constitute a failure of Congress's constitutional oversight role. The Midnight Joint Resolution. Shortly after midnight, the joint resolution was reportedly released publicly with 140 signatures attached. The document calls for the House Judiciary Committee to immediately draft and consider articles of impeachment, citing the IG report as prima facie evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors. An appendix to the resolution, according to the video, includes excerpts from alleged recorded calls, summaries of forensic server logs, financial tracking data related to witness legal defense payments. Republican signatories are quoted as stating that impeachment is not a political weapon, but a constitutional mechanism designed precisely for moments like this. 3 core evidence pillars. The video repeatedly emphasizes 3 elements it describes as central to the case. 1. Forensic deletion logs, digital records allegedly showing deliberate deletion of subpoenaed material, complete with timestamps and user credentials. 2. Recorded witness tampering, audio recordings, purportedly capturing direct or indirect threats aimed at influencing witness testimony. 3. Financial transfers, documentation of $7.8 million in payments to legal defense funds linked to witnesses, which investigators allegedly interpret as inducements. Together, proponents argue, these elements form a cohesive and well-documented narrative of obstruction. Political and constitutional stakes. House Speaker Mike Johnson now finds himself at the center of the storm. According to the video's analysis, he faces a no-win decision. Allowing impeachment proceedings to move forward could fracture the Republican Party, while blocking them could provoke procedural rebellions from within his own caucus. The stakes extend beyond the House. The video suggests that if House Republicans testify publicly in support of impeachment, Senate dynamics could shift dramatically, reshaping assumptions about party line acquittals. More broadly, supporters argue that failure to act would render congressional oversight effectively meaningless, setting a precedent in which documented obstruction carries no institutional consequence. The situation now. As presented in the video, the allegations outlined in the IG report remain publicly unrefuted. The report has reportedly been formally referred to the House Judiciary Committee for consideration, while members of the bipartisan coalition are said to be preparing procedural tools to force action if leadership attempts to stall. Whether the narrative proves accurate or the allegations withstand scrutiny remains to be seen. What is clear, however, is that this moment, real or perceived, is being framed as a defining test of American constitutional governance, a test of whether Congress can still function as an effective check on presidential power, or whether partisan loyalty ultimately overrides institutional responsibility. If impeachment proceeds, it may reshape not only the Trump presidency, but the future boundaries of executive authority in the United States. Why this crisis is different from all previous impeachment moments. What distinguishes this alleged impeachment push from prior efforts is not only its scale, but the nature of the evidence and the institutional actors involved. Previous impeachment battles in U.S. history were often driven by interpretive disputes, arguments over intent, abuse of discretion, or political judgment. The situation described here is fundamentally different. It centers on forensic, technical, and transactional evidence, which is far more difficult to neutralize through partisan messaging. According to the video's analysis, this shift from interpretive to documentary evidence is precisely what has broken traditional party defenses. Timestamped server logs, recorded audio, and financial transfer records are not ideological arguments. They are technical artifacts. Lawmakers reportedly concluded that disputing such material would require either refuting the data itself or discrediting the institutions that produced it, a move many Republicans appear unwilling to make. The institutional weight of an Inspector General report. Inspector General reports occupy a unique space in American governance. Unlike congressional investigations, which are often dismissed as partisan, IG offices are embedded within executive agencies and staffed by career officials trained in compliance, auditing, and criminal referral procedures. The video emphasizes that this particular IG report allegedly follows federal evidence handling standards, includes chain of custody documentation, cross-verifies testimony with digital records, was prepared with potential criminal referrals in mind if accurate. This would mean the report was not written as a political document, but as a quasi-prosecutorial record anticipating judicial scrutiny. This distinction is critical because it raises the cost of ignoring or dismissing the findings. Lawmakers reportedly fear that future legal proceedings could expose those who knowingly disregarded such evidence. Why Republican defections matter structurally. The participation of 62 Republicans is not merely symbolic. It has concrete procedural implications. In House practice, bipartisan sponsorship weakens leadership's ability to bottle up resolutions, strengthens the legitimacy of committee subpoenas, makes claims of partisan persecution less credible in court challenges. The video argues that Republican signatories are also strategically positioned to act as insider witnesses, individuals with credibility among conservative voters who can testify that their decision was evidence-driven rather than ideological. This, in turn, could recalibrate public opinion among constituencies traditionally resistant to impeachment. Speaker Mike Johnson's structural dilemma. From a governance perspective, the pressure on Speaker Mike Johnson is not simply political but procedural. The Speaker controls committee referrals, floor scheduling, and recognition. However, House rules also provide minority and bipartisan coalitions with tools to force action, including discharge petitions, privilege resolutions, procedural objections that can paralyze legislative business. The video suggests that the bipartisan coalition is prepared to deploy these mechanisms if leadership attempts to block impeachment proceedings. If so, Johnson's authority could erode rapidly, transforming a leadership challenge into an institutional crisis within the House itself. The constitutional argument: impeachment as obligation, not option. One of the most striking aspects of the video's narrative is the framing of impeachment not as a political choice, but as a constitutional necessity. Lawmakers are portrayed as arguing that when credible evidence of obstruction exists, Congress has a duty to act regardless of electoral consequences. This argument rests on a core constitutional principle. Impeachment is not a punishment, but a safeguard. If obstruction of justice can be documented and ignored, the video contends, then congressional oversight becomes performative rather than real. The presidency, in such a scenario, would effectively operate beyond accountability. Implications for the Senate and the courts. While impeachment begins in the House, the video highlights downstream consequences that extend far beyond it. If House Republicans testify under oath during hearings, their statements could influence Senate jurors, be referenced in judicial proceedings, trigger independent prosecutorial reviews. Moreover, the existence of recorded evidence and financial records raises the possibility that impeachment proceedings could intersect with criminal investigations, creating parallel accountability tracks, political and legal. A test of the system, not just a presidency. At its core, the video frames this moment as a referendum on whether American institutions can still function as designed. The presidency, Congress, inspectors general, and the rule of law are all implicated. If the allegations are substantiated and Congress fails to act, the precedent would be profound. Future presidents could reasonably conclude that obstruction backed by partisan loyalty carries no real risk. Conversely, if impeachment proceeds despite political cost, it could reaffirm the principle that no office is immune from scrutiny. The unanswered question. As the article continues, one question looms above all others. Will evidence outweigh loyalty? The answer, according to the video's framing, will determine not only the fate of one presidency, but the credibility of congressional oversight for generations to come. In that sense, this is not merely a political crisis. It is a stress test of the American constitutional system itself. As we conclude this report, one reality is clear. The situation unfolding in Washington is about far more than one president or one political party. It is about the future of accountability, the credibility of democratic institutions, and whether the rule of law still applies equally at the highest levels of power. If the allegations outlined in the Inspector General report withstand scrutiny, this moment may be remembered as a defining test of American governance. If Congress acts, it may reaffirm its constitutional role as a guardian against abuse of power. If it fails to act, critics warn it could set a dangerous precedent, one in which documented obstruction carries no consequence. Speaker Mike Johnson now stands at the center of this storm, facing immense pressure from both sides. Meanwhile, a rare bipartisan coalition signals that it is prepared to escalate procedural action if impeachment efforts are blocked. The outcome of this confrontation could reshape not only U.S. politics, but global perceptions of American democracy itself. Here at Rapid Report, we remain committed to following this story closely, separating fact from rhetoric, evidence from speculation, and power from accountability. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it widely. Your support helps us continue delivering independent, in-depth journalism without fear or favor. Thank you for watching Rapid Report. Stay informed, stay critical, and we'll see you in our next report.